so you can say what the fuck you
Testing
want.
1 2. Testing 1 2.
You know, FCC. The curse.
Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2.
Okay.
The fuck you don't.
Living Color. I have 3 members. We have vocalists, Sunrunner Corey Glover.
Hello.
We have Vernon Reed, great guitarist.
Hey.
And we have the great drummer, Will Calhoun.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
And it's my understanding that you all are here for the grand opening of a new exhibition at the Smithsonian African American History Museum,
Yes.
Afrofuturism.
They're gonna have one of my guitars. I donated it to the museum. The guitar that is known in the Cult of Personality video, and it's the guitar that I wrote the riff for Cult of Personality on that guitar. And it's a very special instrument. It's very tied into the history of the band, and also it's tied into New York, very much so. I got that guitar in 1986, and it's tied into a bunch of friendships and relationships. It's a very important object in terms of not just as a musical instrument, but it's also indicative of a certain time period.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's one thing, and I think we have other things that are also donated.
Okay. Okay.
As it pertains to Afrofuturism, I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, but we always thought we were on the precipice of something new. We were in the middle of a renaissance, as it were, for music, and something new was always on the horizon, something that was going to happen, and we thought we were going to ride that sort of idea of something that's coming next.
I'm glad you brought up the Black Rock Coalition because we're approaching the 40th anniversary. It was founded in 1985, I think.
Yes.
And
We're so old!
but it's still so contemporary and it's still so necessary. And when I think about that, I think about almost like a model of the AACM in which it was looking back and looking forward at the same time.
This is like the early 80s. The early 80s were like a weird time in New York with a lot of clubs. And there was a lot of weird stuff going on. Like, you would hang out at one club and then the very next day you couldn't get into the club. That was the time of the Velvet Rope and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I went to a friend's gig and the gig was empty and I started to see a pattern. And I basically made phone calls to a bunch of friends and said, let's get together. We got together at Linda Bryant's gallery, just above Midtown Gallery. Linda gave us our first space to meet, and it was myself, Greg Tate, Craig Street, Condon Mason, Flip Barnes. And we started meeting, and at one point, I think it was Craig said, well, what are we going to do about it? And that was the beginning. And Greg said, I'm going to write a manifesto. And he wrote the Black Rock Coalition Manifesto. So that's just some of the history that went into the formation. And really, I just made that first phone call, but it was the energy of the people that gathered and their ideas that really made the thing happen. I wasn't thinking about an organization. I was just like, I was doing a head check. Am I nuts? Is it me? It was is it me? Every now and again, you got to call your people. Is it me? Sometimes they say, yeah, it's you. Other times they say,
most of the time it's you.
Yeah, most of the time it's you. But sometimes it's not, man. You're not wrong though. And that was it.
So you have this organization and this manifesto and this group, but you elevated it. It became a nonprofit organization. It's one thing to say we're going to have a group and we're going to, do that. Talk a bit about how the strategy of making the Black Rock Coalition a viable strategic entity.
Well, part of it is like the name itself is just provocative. Force people to think about what rock roll is to them, what blackness is to them. I mean, from the white side and the black side. It was really meant to be community more than anything. Like reach out to all the black oddballs, around the country, and say, hey, you know what, you're not wrong. Like again, saying to people, you're not crazy, you're not wrong. and thinking about, Fishbone and DeVelt and Uptown Atomics and The Deed and Bluesland and so many, and of course, none of this would be happening without the Bad Brains on a level. None of this would be happening without the Isley Brothers on a level. None of this would be happening without the Chambers Brothers. Certainly not without Hendrix, and it wouldn't be happening without Billy Preston. You know what I mean? So they're all of these artists that we stood on the shoulders of, and that was a very important component of it. It was a very important component of it. Also, the Black Rock Coalition is not like, the current president of the Black Rock Coalition, LaRonda Davis, is female, and we early on, there were gay people involved, there were women involved in from the very start, Condom Mason, managing the band ISIS. And we made a really kind of a safe space for people to be themselves, and not like a thing where people were shut out. You know what I mean? In terms of, you got to back up, because we're the children of, the Civil Rights Movement and the Black Power Movement. And those movements, we wouldn't be here without them, but those movements were very much, in a way, there was a homophobic component, there was a sexist component, and we didn't have that as part of our DNA from the top. So that was kind of the idea, you know what I mean? And we didn't take corporate money. It's like it's a basically a community organization. It stayed that way. We didn't get money from sponsors. We made concerts, we did retrospectives. We put respect on the names of composers coming up.
So with Vernon, it was really great conversations about the music, what he liked. And you don't meet too many black musicians that are wide open, wide open. You have people who may like jazz and funk, but when I first started talking to Vernon, he was open on the literary piece. He was open on different kinds of writers, and he was writing articles in The Voice. So there was all of these other kind of aspects to that early relationship that was really open to looking into things, looking into what Corey mentioned, us, young black men, us coming from the generation what our parents and grandparents set up for us standing on the shoulders of so many great people. It was a situation of, okay, what are y'all gonna do now? Because we had the tools, people really gave us the tools, and the environment was there for us to implement those tools. And fortunately for us, everybody was on the page of really wanting to get to work and be creative and make some kind of an impact, create an impact on the people that influenced us.
You have to learn. And I said, okay, I got it. It's out here. It's right here. Education, the university of the world, the university of the universe is right here. I got it. I love a library, but I'm not going to school. I'm going to learn it from the world. The world is going to teach me exactly what I need to know. And it did. And it also taught me about a universal truth that as a singer in a band situation like this, I'm sort of interpreting what the music says to people in a language they can conceptualize. So that has to be truthful. It has to feel truthful. It has to come from a sense of honesty. My neighborhood, Vernon and I are from this neighborhood in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, that has a persistent African American, Caribbean American, Latino American, and Hasidic Jewish neighborhood. All these things sort of working its way around each other. And there's a musical and artist component to it that you could hear in the street. That you could walk past a building and hear soca music in one place, jazz in out another window, salsa and merengue coming out of the bodega, and all of it is a part of your life. And I love that you can get an education just walking down the street, and I did. And I, thank God for my parents wanting to live in this particular place in Brooklyn because of the diversity that existed in there, and the number of people that I've met going through all this that would give me things that I can never not learn. I can never not take away. It can't take it away from me. There's nothing we can't overcome, nothing that we can't transcend without really being honest with each other, and me being and that in turn me trying to be as honest to an audience as possible, or to an individual as possible, because all it takes is one person to hear it.
You know, it's funny because, you know, songs, the thing that I find in being a fan of pop music and all the different genres, songs that mean something, despite the craft, because craft is a given, but the songs that mean something are about something. There are all the songs that cut through the noise and affect us are about something. Wichita lineman. I am a lineman for the county, or travel the big road. Like,
I want it that way. You are my fire. It's like the way that was sung, the way that was presented, was the most honest thing that I'd ever heard in pop music at the time.
you know, they tried to make me go to rehab. I said, no.
Right.
You know, that shit was so honest and so real and so tragic. As soon, the first time I heard it, I said, I don't know who she is, but she means that shit. Everything that does that, and it doesn't have to be serious, it doesn't have to be political. Good times. You know what I mean? It can be frivolous, you know, that's the way I like it. That song really about nothing, but it's really about nothing. I mean, it really is about nothing, and that's the genius of that song. Because it's not, never defines it, but it really mean, you know, that's the way, I like it, and that bass line is a killer, right?
That's the way. Casey and
the Sunshine Band, you know, everybody loves the sunshine. Dun da da, dun da da. It's about something.
Love is a message.
Love is the message. That's the thing, and that's the confusion, because people talk about politics or social, this, that, and the other thing. It's funny because I was talking about War Pigs, like Black Sabbath. Like War Pigs is one of the most deeply political songs ever. I've never heard anybody talk about Black Sabbath. Every time Black Sabbath comes up, it's about the Satanic Panic and Ozzy biting the head off of bats or whatever nonsense, or pigeons or whatever the hell he's doing, or whatever, you know, theatrical. But they never talk about the fact that that song's about the military-industrial complex for real.
Okay. Wow.
I've never heard anybody. And that's one of the most political songs in metal or rock of all time. Like recently, you know, we got the honor from Rolling Stone of our Cult of Personality being the 12th best metal song. So I said, well, it's a metal. Is it really metal? And I said, somebody on Twitter said, well, is it metal? And I thought about it, I said, well, it's no less metal than War Pigs.
Right.
That's it. I mean, but the point of it is, with our music, we do songs that they have to feel. He's not gonna sing it. He's not gonna do it if it doesn't have that component. It has to be, whatever it is, it has to have that feeling. Because that's the only way he's gonna sing it, that's the only way we're gonna play it. That's the only way it's gonna work for us. That's the only way it's gonna work for us. And that has stood us in good stead.
Wow.
Over all this time.
Corey, I want to talk to you. So you became the lead singer, and when you were coming in, I understand that you were navigating not only a career in singing, but you were an actor as well.
I was doing more acting than I was doing singing at that particular point in time, and I was trying to be basically shoe leather auditioning actor. Like, I'm gonna go to every Colgate commercial, every whatever it was a radio commercial, whatever it was, I was gonna be there. The more opportunities than not, I got a chance to sing than I did to act. But at the point at which I met Vernon and everybody else in the band, certain things in my career started to take off. Like, I got a real job doing a feature film. I had opportunities to go over to LA to do to do the pilot season and that kind of stuff, and I had to make a decision from every time as to, am I going to do this? Am I going to do that? But I knew that when I got back, I was going to put all my energy into Living Color at that point, and I have ever since. And that this is my home. This is my bread and butter. And,
Wow. So, Will, talk a bit about how you came into Living Color. Like, did you all have a relationship with Vernon and Corey? I understand. You went to Berkeley, right?
I went to Berkeley.
You went to Berkeley College of Music.
Yes. And actually, I came home one weekend to see a group that I was a fan of called Bush Rock, which featured Cameron Denard on drums, who I was studying with at the time, on and off, Delmar Brown on keyboards, and Ray Wesley Grant. I should say the late, great Delmar Brown. But Vernon was at that show, and Jaco Pastorius, the great bassist Jaco Pastorius, was doing these kind of, there was a small after late night club called the Jazz Cultural Theater, and that's where people would go at 2 or 3 in the morning to kind of jam and do things. And Jaco was working on new music, and he hired me and a bass player. He was playing piano. So I met Jaco, and I was doing these kind of little trio things at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. When I walked into the Grand Street Club that night, the first person I saw was Jaco, and he was saying, "What's going on? How's school?" And Vernon walked by, and he asked me if I knew, "Do you know this guy? You need to know this guy." And that was kind of the first kind of a brief introduction. I thought Vernon was a bass player when he said that, but I found out later he played guitar, but the way Jaco said it, I thought he was a bass player. So we sort of stayed in touch, and then when I returned from school, Vernon and Greg had a radio show. And I had a band in college called Dark Sarcasm, and I gave Vernon one of my demo tapes that we cut in school. And Vernon liked the songs and played one of the songs on his show and talked about the song on the show. We were really more kind of friends at first, just like on the music tip. And I went to a Black Rock Coalition meeting and had a chance to see that early on. Sat next to the late great Jerry Allen at the time. Jerry and I met Jerry and going into the meeting, and that's what she told me. She'd just come to town from Detroit. So we just started talking, and Vernon, that was my first meeting. And things kind of went around a little bit, and he gave me some great Living Color cassettes with different versions that he'd spoke of earlier, with the trio and different singers, instrumental stuff, and it was great music. And then he called me one day and basically said, "Look, my drummer's not going to be able to make it. You know, I'm going to send you some music. Can you do this gig with us?" And that's sort of where it began. And then once I played the gig, and then he moved over to a place from Brooklyn, a rehearsal space. And that was the beginning. I met Corey. Actually, he'd just come from the Philippines and shooting Platoon. So I heard about him, but I finally had a chance to meet him on my first rehearsal for Living Color, and that was the beginning of it for me. It was great, and it was the attractive sides of the band. I would say honestly, growing up in New York and just being a drummer in New York City, we had original music. You know, we were playing these great compositions that Vernon wrote, and it was already inviting in that we weren't doing cover songs. I mean, when we played cover songs, it was more for fun, not for survival or to get paid. A lot of times when you're hustling in New York City, you have to do, you know, funk songs, R&B songs. Even in the jazz clubs, they want you to play standards. And one of the really attractive parts about linking up with the guys and playing the music was immediately it was original music, and immediately we were putting our own personalities into the music. It wasn't like any experience I had previously to joining a band. It was always like, we're going to do hotels, we're going to play so-and-so's club, or we're going to do wedding. It was always that vibe, or you know, you have to have a blues song in there. We're going to do standards, you got to do 2 miles tunes, a train tune, and a bird tune. You know, those are kind of, that was the recipes we would issue most of the times playing gigs, especially early on in New York. So that was the initial attraction.